judge, we have Maria Rule. Thank you. Okay. All right, so that, anybody else that I might have missed? Okay. Real quick, we're gonna dive right into this fast, but just want to let you know, we have the green light from Sarasota County Parks and Recreation. We are going forward with the historic Nokomis Festival. It will be in March of 2019, and the goal is to bring the community together, let them see a lot of the services that Sarasota County provides to each of us. Also, we're going to have more of a historic perspective on Nokomis. John McCarthy, if you know John McCarthy, he's a local historian. He'll be doing lectures in this room for that. We hope to have a blood drive going on, and the main purpose is to raise money for underprivileged kids here in the Laurel Nokomis community for them to attend Sarasota County Summer Camp next summer. And we just found out that this summer there are 4,000 children participating in Sarasota County camp programs. So really, really positive and successful. We just feel like that if we as a community can do more to help get these kids a pathway to some structure and not fall off the other side and get into a little more trouble, we'll be better served and we'll have better kids for our community. But that's going forward. And also, if anybody would like to volunteer, talk to me. We've got plenty of things to do. Also, coming up real quick on, on August the 13th, Kona will be doing a District 4 for County Commission, another debate forum for you to get to know. So if you didn't get enough for tonight, because we have Al Maio, that's the incumbent for District 4 seat, he elected not to be here tonight. So, but we left a seat for him in case he wanted to show up. But he's been invited for that as well. So, but you've got Wesley, Ann Beggs, Mike Consentino, Al Maio, and Lourdes Ramirez that are scheduled, that have been invited. Also, want to mention this, you might think that, granted, it's at Halloween, late October, the 6th annual Haunted Trails at Oscar Shear Park. Tickets are going on sale September 3rd. This is always a sellout. I promise you, if you wait until the middle of October to want to go, probably not going to be, you'll have to find something else to do. But there's more information if you want to do, if you're interested in that, but that's always really popular there. Okay, and then Vicki, if you could bring me the raffles. Well, we're going to do this at the beginning, just to, but Paradise Grill, everybody knows Paradise Grill at Laurel Road and US 41 in the Publix Plaza. Mary Beth Hanson is the owner there, and she has been a tremendous asset for the Nokomis community. And every time I have needed something for NACA or for the community, she's always raised her hand, she's ready to go. And so for tonight, we are going to raffle off a gift certificate for Paradise Grill. Greg Steube, if you will reach in and pick a winner for us, please. Okay, ticket number 662530. Okay. Congratulations. Thank you. Okay, so for tonight's agenda, each of the candidates, they were given questions ahead of time. This is always kind of our format. We always feel like that this allows each of these candidates to give some time and some thought, and just not talking points, but it allows you to learn more about these individuals. And it's always been a very civil format, and we always encourage that. You know, we're not looking to get ugly. It's not. We want nice ladies and gentlemen, and that's what we expect. And as we do the introductions, each candidate will get 3 minutes to introduce themselves, and it's kind of wide open for where they want to go. I mean, the only thing that I ask of the Board of County Commission is if they would state how long they've been a resident of Sarasota County and their record of community service. And other than that, but we're going to start with the gentleman here to my right, and I'm going to first call on Greg Steube, please.
Thank you, Bill. Thanks for having us here today. We only have 3 minutes, so I'll just briefly tell you about my background and who I am and why I'm running, if I can get through that in 3 minutes. But my family's been in Sarasota County for 4 generations. My great-grandfather retired here. My grandfather started his printing company up off Cattleman Road. My dad's first job as a law enforcement officer was at Longboat Key Police Department, and later he ascended to become the sheriff of Manatee County. And I grew up in this area, and early on had a background in agriculture. I actually got involved in the cattle industry and thought that was something I wanted to do long term. So I was in 4-H and FFA in high school, and that'll become important later when I tell you about the district. And then I went to the University of Florida, got a bachelor's degree in beef cattle science. Most people didn't think you could get a degree in beef cattle science, but I went to the University of Florida, got a degree in beef cattle science with a minor in agricultural law. And it was at that point in my undergraduate studies that I got my start in politics. I had the opportunity to be a part of the Florida Cattlemen's Association and lobby the legislature, and had an opportunity to intern in U.S. Congress as a young undergrad at the College of Agriculture at UF. So I decided to go to law school. I don't think all legislators should be lawyers, but I thought it would be a good background to have as a legislator to understand the laws that we put into place. So I went to law school at the University of Florida, and my first semester of law school was when September 11th occurred. And as many of you as Americans, that was a big day in the history of our country. And I felt moved and motivated to serve my country. So I actually graduated law school early, enlisted in the United States Army. I spent about 1.5 years in the infantry branch, transferred from the infantry branch to JAG, served with the 25th Infantry Division in service of our country in Operation Iraqi Freedom. I deployed 06 to 07 in service of our country. But I always had that political bug kind of itching me. So I came back from active duty 08. Ran for the State House, got elected in 2010, which was Southern Hillsborough County, East Manatee County, and East Sarasota County. And then in 2016, had the opportunity, I feel like deja vu 2 years ago, being here in the Senate race, I had the opportunity to run for the State Senate, which was all of Sarasota County and the western portion of Charlotte County, and have the honor to represent you, all of Sarasota County, in the State Senate. All those years I've worked on things that I think we need to do in Washington. In the 8 years that I've been in the legislature, we've cut $10 billion in taxes. We've put $3 billion in reserves. We've cut over 5,000 regulations. We have a AAA bond rating in the state of Florida because of the policies of the leadership, 30 seconds, because of the policy that the leadership's had in place in Tallahassee. And that's the kind of leadership that we need in Washington, D.C. Every single year that I've been in the state legislature, every single year we've balanced our budget. Wouldn't it be nice if Washington, D.C. balanced their budget every single year? And instead of taxing us more and more and spending more and more, looking for us as taxpayers and trying to cut the spending that we have at the federal level. So I want to take the conservative principles that I've had and I've worked for at the state level for the 8 years that I've represented Sarasota County and the state legislature, and I want to take that to Washington, D.C. So thank you very much for having us.
Well, thank you, NACA. Thank you, Bill, for putting all this together. This is a great stop in the campaign trail every year, and I'm always pleasantly surprised of the attendance and the enthusiasm that you all bring to this event. So anyway, my name is Dr. Julio Gonzalez, and I'm running for Congress. I'm an orthopedic surgeon. I practice in Venice. I've been in this area since 2004. Kind of losing track of time now. I think it's 14 years. And I gotta tell you, about 6 years ago, I made a decision, and it had to do with where I could best serve my community. My whole life has been devoted to service to others. It's something that was taught to me in high school, which is, how do you best serve your community and make yourself the best possible asset for those around you. And I was looking at the national scene in politics, and I think you all will agree with me when you look at it and you realize, my goodness, it's so destructive right now. There's so much hyper-partisanship, and there's so little cooperation. It just feels that people are just delivering their talking points and fighting and shouting over everybody else's voices. And I thought that the solution was that, and part of the problem is that we're not sending folks who are what are best qualified in the community to go serve in Congress. We're not serving people who are going to analyze the situations objectively and come to solutions. We're not sending people who have unique qualities and a unique background. And I looked at myself and I realized that I was one of those folks. I was one of those folks who have the unique background. I am an orthopedic surgeon. I have been practicing medicine, taking care of people one-on-one for my whole adult life. I'm a veteran. I served on the America, rolled around on an aircraft carrier for 8 months at a time once, and another time for another 4 months, and was able to go all the way to Mogadishu and Saudi Arabia and really be involved in some of the important conflicts that we had at the time. But then something happened. I saw the attack and the assault that was taking place on our healthcare, and I ended up advocating for it. And as I advocated for it, I realized that I needed more information to be able to really solve these problems, attack these problems. I went to law school, became a lawyer. So I'm a doctor, I'm a lawyer, I'm a veteran. And then when that fateful day, as I was looking at myself in the mirror, trying to figure out whether I had something really positive to add, I said that I did. I realized that I did. And so I ran for State House. So the same question is now popping before me, and except that instead of being state rep, it's Congress. And to me, the answer is yes. And I hope that when we finish analyzing my candidacy, you too will agree. Thank you very much.
Bill Akins.
Thank you, and it's an honor to be here tonight. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Bill Akins, and I live in Port Charlotte. And unlike my opponents, I'm not a native Floridian. I moved here about 10 years ago. And like my opponents, I'm not an attorney. And you know, we look now to Congress, and what do we have? 80% attorneys with all this experience. Where are we? We need to send people up there that are like us, that are one of you. You know, I've had businesses, I've had successful businesses, and I've had failures. The reason I got into this was because our incumbent absolutely deserted the veterans. And I am a veteran. I spent 4 years in Vietnam, in combat most of the time, and been involved with all these different veterans groups, and we were deserted. The guy sat on the House Subcommittee for Veterans Affairs and just let it go down the tubes. And then I started talking to people in other areas of the district, and everyone was pretty well upset. So I decided back in October to run against an incumbent. Nobody would run against him. Well, in January, he bailed out. And I'm stuck with these guys. And I say that in jest. We have a unique relationship. But I want to go work for you. I'm not going to work for special interest and Big Sugar and, you know, New York City doctors who pay $1,000 a plate for fundraising. I'm going to work for you. I've not taken one dime out of this district. Not from any corporations. That's why I'm the low guy in the totem pole. You know, I'm not taking all that big money from corporations and special interests. Because I don't care what they want. I want to know what you want. And that's why I'm here. I'm a Christian. I'm a conservative. I'm anti-abortion. We got to get taxes lowered. We cannot increase the debt ceiling anymore. We got to get it lowered. Our great-grandchildren are going to be in a real world of hurt if we don't do something now. We've got to start knocking that thing down now. We've got to support President Trump on his agenda on immigration. You know, we've just got to get those things done. Build the wall as big and ugly as Nancy Pelosi can stand. But we've got to get those things done. And I stole that from Dr. Gonzalez. So, but anyway, That's why I want to go. I want to go to work for you. And everyone's needs are going to be different. Every part of the district is going to be different. You know, I worked on cattle ranches when I was in high school. Every summer I would go out there on cattle ranches, family farms. So I'm familiar with agriculture. You know, maybe not as much as Mr. Steube, but I've got an idea what's going on. But I'm going to work for you and the people, not the special interest. And August 28th, I would hope that you would consider me, and feel free to give me a call anytime you like. Thank you.
Okay, to my chair right here, to my immediate left, we have Christian Ziegler and Al Maio that elected not to be here for you tonight, but we just left it up there for you to recognize that. So we're going to move right down to the next chair, to Lourdes Ramirez.
Good evening. My name is Lourdes Ramirez, and I'm running for Sarasota County Commission. I moved to Sarasota in 1999, so almost 20 years ago, and almost immediately I started to see changes I didn't like. In my neighborhood, small regular houses were being torn down, and 2 mega houses were going up. So much so with lot line to lot line, and then we started to see increasing of flooding. Cars couldn't park in the driveway, didn't have enough room, so they were parked all over the place. And I mean, there was no green space. They were doing picnics in their driveway. It was getting very ridiculous. So I decided to become more involved in the community, learn the zoning code. So I joined the CSE Association. I was on that board for 9 years, 5 as its president. And after that, I went to Kona, and I became president of the Council of Neighborhood Associations for a few years while we worked on countywide issues. But then I realized quickly that in order for us to make change, we would need to be involved in politics. So I got involved in both partisan and nonpartisan groups. I was on the board of the League of Women Voters for a couple of years, but I also joined the Republican Club, and I'm currently the president of the Women's Republican Club. Now, the whole thing for me was, how are we growing as a community? I'm not anti-development. Growth can be a good thing, but just not at any cost. And there are 3 costs to development. The financial cost, because a lot of people don't realize when all these new developments are being approved, the taxes it generates does not cover the infrastructure that it needs. So for every dollar that we get in revenue for taxes in these new developments, it costs the government $1.53. So we are subsidizing all these new developments, including the 30,000 homes that got approved over the past 5 years. So there's the financial cost of growth. The second thing is the human cost. Who hasn't been stuck in traffic? I mean, even when it's not season. So that is a problem we have to face, and we're facing constantly. Bad roads, bad infrastructure, and also reduction of government services, because we don't have as much, library hours, for example, or I think our natural parks have been neglected. And the third cost is, of course, the cost of our brand. People in Manatee County like to call themselves Sarasotans because we have a reputation. I mean, if you think of different cities, you think of Detroit, you have an image. You think of Sarasota, you have an image. Well, instead of growing that image, I think our image is eroding because of the problems we have with our quality of life is being threatened by overdevelopment, by traffic, and by the problems we're having with our natural resources. So I'm running for county commission to represent you and not the developers. And I think it's important that we have more citizen input. Thank you.
Alexandra.
Hello everyone, thank you for coming. My name is Alexandra To tell you a little bit about me, I grew up in Ohio, and when I was 21 years old, I decided I was just going to pick up and move to Florida because everybody from Ohio ended up here anyway. I figured I might as well get a head start. So I lived in Florida for a number of years, and then I got married and I went overseas, and I lived in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia for 3 years. And then when I came back to Florida, I had one young son and another baby on the way, and I decided that Sarasota was where I wanted to raise my family. So I raised my 2 boys here, and I've lived in Sarasota now for 23 years. During that time, I've been involved with a lot of things. When I first was here, I started a youth mentoring business where I ran summer camps and a variety of programs for young girls. I believe very strongly in youth mentoring, and I continue to be a youth mentor to this day, reaching out to a variety of high school students and high school and college students in our community. As far as why I'm running for county commissioner, everybody always wonders what makes you take that leap off of the cliff. You know, I've been involved in this community for a long time. I've worked with a lot of not-for-profit organizations, and I've been involved with a variety of civic organizations, and also I've been involved with a lot of issues that are surrounding development. I attended some of the early meetings in 2002 with the Sierra Club when they were finalizing the 2050 plan, and I continue to pay attention to what was going on with development in our community. I was asked to be on the board for Control Growth, and I sat on the board as the East County expert. I know East County very well. I have studied the cattle ranching community here, and I was a student at New College. And while a student at New College, I actually did my thesis on the ethnobotany of Southwest Florida from Paleo-Indian times to the present. And so I happen to be an expert of some sort on environmental systems of Southwest Florida, not just looking at them on maps, but actually trekking through things like Corkscrew Swamp and a variety of other habitats, looking for different types of botanicals. I think that that's something that's really important, is for us to have somebody on the county commission that understands environmental systems, because we would all agree that our environmental systems here are under threat. As far as where I'm involved now, I'm currently the vice chair of the Commission on the Status of Women. I'm the chair of the Republican Liberty Caucus. I'm also a member of the Republican Executive Committee. And I'm running because I'm one of us. I'm one of us, and I've been involved with this community, so I'm not coming all Pollyanna to make changes. I know this community, and I know we can do better. Thank you.
Consentino.
Good evening. My 8th grade social sciences teacher was the daughter of famous tightrope walker Carl Linda, and I remember her telling us one day that her mom had warned them against playing in 41 because it was Thanksgiving weekend and a car might come by. Obviously, I think those times have changed a little. My name is Mike Consentino. I was born and raised right here in Sarasota. My mom was a 1952 Sarasota High graduate. She delivered Meals on Wheels for 30 years, volunteered as a pharmacist at the Pines, and several other Sarasota organizations. My dad came here in 1948. He started Consentino Construction, which I run today, in 1956. And they're examples of community service. Pretty much gave me the values that I have in trying to pursue that to this day. I was sitting there watching the TV, I'm sure like a lot of us, and sat there slack-jawed for a couple weeks after 9/11. I said, you know, if something else happens, I'm going to sit there and watch it on TV, I'm going to do something about it. So the next couple years later, Hurricane Charlie came through Arcadia, went out there in the middle of a building boom and, you know, patched people's roofs for several months. I was given the governor's Point of Light Award for that. Lived in a tent in Mississippi for 3 months after Hurricane Katrina and got the president's Point of Light Award for that. I saved the Turtle Beach campground on Siesta Key from becoming a parking lot. That took considerable time and energy. That was, and today it remains the only Gulfront campground on Siesta Key. For the last 2 years, I'm starting over financially at 54 because I've literally sold and invested all of the money that I had in a 2-year lawsuit against Sarasota for giving away $10 million worth of public property on Siesta Key. I don't know if you guys might have noticed that little sign I got in the back of my truck, but I've been pretty fired up about that for quite a while. And just seeing the way that the county runs roughshod over the public interest and over me in this lawsuit, they basically break the law for their campaign donating friends, and then they turn around and use the county attorney's office not to represent us, the people, but to represent them. And that's pretty much what's prompted my run for county commission. And I would really enjoy and look forward to the opportunity to serve each and every one of you in that capacity. Thank you for your time.
Ruta Jouniari.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Ruta Maria Jouniari, and I'm running for Sarasota County Commissioner in District 2. Like many of you, I moved here from the north. I moved here from Boston. I was educated in a degree in finance and an MBA in Boston. Worked for Aetna U.S. Healthcare, developing the eastern seaboard of the United States with hospital networks for the PPO and HMO side. I came down here and I opened up my own business 14 years ago, which is an international staffing company that employs veterans and places them overseas. But then with something also, I think something always happens to us. And what happened is 2 years ago, I co-founded a free medical clinic in Sarasota that provides health care to those who have no health care insurance. In doing so, what happened is I met with people on a daily basis who are struggling in this county, who are working 2-3 jobs, who can't make ends meet, who can't find affordable housing, who have to choose between health care, housing, and food on the table for their children. And that's really what sparked me to run. So I'm going to be fighting for the environment, obviously, because that drives our economy. I was endorsed today by the Sierra Club, which is a national organization for protection of wildlife. And I will be making sure that we have sustainable development. We all want development, we know it's coming, we all want friends to move here and live here, and that's not an issue really. We know that has to occur, but it has to be done systematically with infrastructure. And I think all of us are frustrated with infrastructure, whether you're living on Laurel Road, River Road, doesn't matter. When you have to go through the traffic and you're worried now if a hurricane comes and you're going to have a death trap of getting out, that's a concern to all of us. We have to make sure we have proper evacuation roads and proper infrastructure in our county. We also have to make sure we have security. We want to make sure that ambulances and EMS can get through roads, that we're not building out and not making it accessible. So these are some of the things that I'll be working for. Outside of starting the clinic, I also started a group called Women's Interfaith Network, which is now about 220 women strong, of all faiths and all diversity backgrounds. And I also worked on a Jenny Poe reconstruction project in Newtown for women. And recently I joined the Homeless to Home program in Northport. So for me, when I run, I don't run for myself, and I hate saying I'm running for office because I want to run for us and have the voice of all the people, not just myself. But all too often we get drowned out by somebody, whether it's a big interest group or someone else. So I just want to make sure that we have a voice. I have a very open door policy. Anyone can contact me day or night. I always respond to them. I feel like we all need to be out and about in our community and care about our community. So I look forward to you voting for me on November 6th. Thank you very much.
Got an empty chair, ma'am. There's ma'am, if you'd like to chair, if you'd like to sit down, we've got plenty of empty seats. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. And then Wesley and Biggs.
Hello. So I know I'm a new face to quite a few of you, and I just want to start off by saying thank you for coming out, taking the time to listen to all these great candidates. There's a bunch of different ways you could be spending your time, so when you show up and listen to us go on, it means the world to us. My name is Wesley Ann Beggs, and I filed to be your next Sarasota County Commissioner in District 4 because we currently have someone that is not listening and doesn't frankly care about what we have to say. And we see that with the Sheriff's Depot when there's a much better parcel on Knightsbridge and Rustic Road. They chose to put that there anyways, regardless of such an outpouring of the community's concerns. I am running to represent citizens in this county that value environmental protection, affordable housing, and sustainable development. And I will give you a little bit of background on myself. I am a native Floridian, like a lot of people up here. I was born and raised in Tampa, and I came down here to go to college. That was about 10 years ago. I graduated in political science, and I too wrote a thesis out of New College of Florida, though it wasn't on ethnobotany. It was on foreign direct investment. Anyway, Lost my train of thought. I come from a very long line of Florida natives, but not just Florida natives, civic servants. My great-great-uncle actually founded, or was the first ever city manager of St. Pete, Florida, and my mom has spent 30 years at the VA up in Tampa, and she's currently the medical director of home care for our veterans. I have a long history of being very volunteer-oriented. When I graduated high school, I had almost 1,000 volunteer hours accrued. By the time I graduated new college, I nearly doubled that, and I worked primarily with high school students. I actually founded and secured grant funding for a peer mediation program that went into our local high schools and taught them how to resolve conflict through communication and direct listening, so that they don't get into fights and stuff in the cafeteria. And through that, it was really eye-opening. I have a lot of faith in the generations that are coming up, and I think that we as a society can be doing quite a bit to empower those future leaders, because that's really where we need to be focusing. Again, I'm fighting for affordable housing, sustainable development, not build it first, plan it second, which seems to be the mantra of our current county commission. We need to put a bridle on these developers, and we're just right in saying that they aren't going to stop, and we know that, but we can be building for the future. We can be building much smarter and using our resources to our advantage, not, again, just build it first, plan it second, which seems to be the overwhelming majority. You can learn more about myself and my platform at winwithwesley.com if you're interested. I do have a primary opponent, Mike Consentino, and July 30th is the last day, so Republicans, if you want to come over to the Democratic side, July 30th is the last day to register, and that's true for NPAs as well. Awesome, thank you.
Okay, our first question for our candidates for U.S. Representative District 17. And we will go right down just like we went on for the first question. First goes to Greg Steube. The question is, even though Sarasota County is divided into 2 different districts, what do you consider Congress's top issues as it relates to Sarasota County and District 17? How will you contribute to the solution of these issues if elected?
It's going to be tough to talk about that in 2 minutes, but I'll try to squeeze as much in as I can. To give you an idea of this district, Sarasota County is one of 9 counties that is in this congressional district. This congressional district goes all the way from north of Bartow and Polk County, all the way to northern Lee County and Lehigh Acres, all the way west to here, and all the way east to Okeechobee. So it's a very diverse district. And I'm the only candidate in this race, as I told you before, that has an agricultural background. This district is one of the largest agricultural districts in the entire country. This district is the #1 citrus producing district in the entire nation, to give you an idea of the size of the agriculture in this district. So I think having someone with an agricultural background is very, very important. One of the top issues I see in this district that I've talked to both dairymen, citrus growers, and right here in PGT Industries and Tervis Tumblers is labor. And finding skilled workforce and a skilled labor to find. If you, pretty much anywhere you drive in this district, the #1 sign you see is now hiring. It doesn't matter if it's a small business. If you talk to the CEO of PGT Industries, they can't find skilled workers that are willing to come and work. If you talk to the CEO of Tervis Tumblers, they can't find a skilled workforce to come and work, and people willing and able to work. So I think if you look at the whole district as a whole, between the dairy farmers in Okeechobee, the citrus growers in Sebring and Highlands County, and then you've got South Sarasota County with a lot more manufacturing and housing, that is the biggest challenge that we face as a congressional district, I think, in this area of the state of Florida. So I think that's one of the things that we need to work on is workforce innovation, allow our young people to want to stay here in Florida and get the skills and training they need in more technical colleges. I think is very, very important. See, I can only get through like one issue in 30 seconds. So there's a lot of different things that I think are very important statewide and nationally that are important to this district. I think having somebody with the background that has a background in both fighting for strong economic policies, has a background in agriculture to represent those industries, and fight for workforce development and getting our people and the jobs that they need, I think is really important for this district. Thank you.
Well, I'll take the question in reverse order, because I'll start by talking to you about Sarasota County. And the fact is, I live here. I breathe here. When I go out and have lunch, I have lunch here. When I go escape, I go to Frank Theater if I'm not at the beach. I raised my kids here. I had my kids participate in Epiphany Cathedral, and my daughter graduated in Venice, from Venice High School. My older daughter went through the Sarasota Youth Opera program. So to tell you that I have roots and I'm completely invested, completely involved, inculcated in Sarasota County is an understatement. That is the one thing that separates me from any of the other candidates geographically. But then there's the bigger question, because the county, the district is very diverse. On the west side, we have Paradise. We have the place where people come from Ohio to live and reward themselves for having put in a life's work and having saved. And on the other side, we have the part of the country that, bottom line is, they feed the rest of the country. And so you would think that it's kind of a dichotomous situation, but it actually is not, because there's one thing that unifies. It's actually a couple things, three actually. Three things that unify them all. One of them is healthcare. One of them is healthcare. Because it doesn't matter whether you live in Highlands County in Sebring, or whether you live in Sarasota County, which is the highest Medicare population in the country. Healthcare is what unites us all. This need for having our healthcare being taken care of and having good leadership in healthcare unites us all. Our veterans. I can't tell you how many veterans there are here, but how many veterans there are east of 75. You know why? Because they go serve and they come back and they work with their families and they work with the farms. And I'm a veteran too. And then the third thing, and we've touched upon it before, and I think one of the questions might deal with it, so I'll just touch upon it and glance on it today. Water. Water. Our water issues. It is just as important for our farmers as it is for us here in Sarasota County. If you put all that together, I think my candidacy fits. Thank you very much.
I'll kind of pick up where Dr. Gonzalez left off. The biggest problem I hear is water. Whose fault is that? Whose fault is all this gunk coming down Okeechobee? It's not your fault. How about the state lawmakers that have allowed this to happen? Get up there, okay. You know, how about the state lawmakers that allowed this to happen? It didn't happen overnight. We've seen it coming, and every year it's been worse and worse and worse because nobody wants to do anything. Big sugar money, you know, keeping everybody turned away. The biggest problems that you're going to see in Sarasota County today are not going to be there next year. They're going to be changing. So the problems, you're going to tell me. I'm not going to tell you. You're going to tell me what the problems are. And then we'll go to work fixing them. There's only so much that as a U.S. Congressman that I can do that needs to be taken care of at the local levels, and that's where a lot of this has started. So as a congressman, I'll do what you need me to do, what you tell me to do, but you also have to get the right mix of people at the state, because they turn their heads and look the other way when all this stuff's coming down the Caloosahatchee and coming up the coast. So veterans, Dr. Gonzalez mentioned veterans. Let me tell you, I spent almost 10 years in the Army, 4 of them in Vietnam, and I have seen the absolute mess that the VA is in. That I can do something about at the federal level. And there are so many veterans up here in Sarasota County that need to get quality care. And until we reform the VA, that's not going to happen. I hope that this last little thing that the President pushed through and signed, this Affordable Veterans Choice Act, is better than the old Veterans Choice, because it was a nightmare. But veterans are going to be my #1 priority, and then the water. Thank you.
Okay, now to my left, we're going to go to our first question for the Board of County Commission. This is a long question, so hang in there with me. Sarasota County continues to be one of the most popular areas in the country to reside. The number one issue of concern with voters with Sarasota continues to be what many call out of control growth, with our quality of life in decline. For many longtime residents, this is very concerning with no end in sight. Currently, our road infrastructure is over capacity, according to FDOT in many places, especially during season when population increases 50%. With the Benderson project at US 41 to Stickney Point, the massive development coming east of I-75, West Villages to the south, Palmer Ranch no longer a ranch. What are your views on this issue as a community leader and commissioner? What can and will you do to address? Please include in your definition of smart growth, what is your short-term, which is 5 to 10 years, and long-term 20-plus years vision for Sarasota County should you be elected? Lourdes Ramirez. Sorry for the long question.
That was long. As I mentioned before, there is a concern of overdevelopment in Sarasota County. I'm a strong believer that if we're going to grow, we should grow organically. But they keep approving more and more development. In fact, if the county commission just took a vacation for the next 30 years, we can still continue to grow with the amount of development approved today. So I really think we have a problem. And I think when the county commission is faced with, when somebody has a public hearing, they can go and, like, according to US 41, he could build today. But he doesn't want to build what he's allowed to do. Of course, he wants more. And that's what we keep hearing in these public hearings, how much more they want. So I believe the county commission should actually basically ask 3 questions. Okay, who's paying for the infrastructure for that new development? Is there current infrastructure in place to handle the growth? And third, is it going to harm the community? Because if a lot of places you probably don't realize are being flooded because of all the development and all the pavement happening nearby. So obviously it's hurting one community while another community is growing. So I believe that in the long term, we have to really monitor how we grow. And if we don't have the infrastructure in place and we don't have the money to pay for new infrastructure, then new development shouldn't be approved. So that's the reason why I want to be a county commissioner. I think we need to have really intelligent people out there looking at development and making sure it's good for all of us and not just for the special few.
Well, I think the number one question that our current county commissioners and county commissioners in the past have missed is the question, is this good for the people in this community? And that will definitely be the number one question I ask myself, and that's what we see over and over with development. We all agree that there's too much development, so how do you stop it, right? It's like a runaway train. How do you stop it? Well, first, you elect people to county commission who are not funded by the development community. That helps. And then you have to have some kind of strategy. The 2050 plan, or comprehensive plan, has been under siege for a number of years. It basically doesn't exist. But there are numerous community development plans. There's one for Inglewood, there's one for Old Mayaca, there's a number of community vision plans that exist. And those are things that need to be honored. They need to not be ignored. The Fruitville Initiative dictates how development is supposed to look there. Why do we let these commissioners ignore it? We need to hold them to the fire and make sure that they are doing the things for us. We're paying the taxes, they work for us. And that's why I'm running for county commission, because I'm going to be accountable to you.
Consentino.
Okay, massive development south of Stickney Point Road, south of Clark Road. Goodness gracious, how do I feel about this? It makes me sick. I was born and raised here. I've camped, hunted, boated, fished in every corner of this community over the last 50 years, and when I see what's going on, I just don't know what the heck to do about it. And I can This is kind of funny. It's actually not funny at all. The biggest hearing that I've had in this 2-year lawsuit with Beach Road was where I came from, to try to keep my costs under control. I mean, I'm a carpenter, don't get me wrong, I am not an attorney, but I have had to do most of my own legal work just to try to stick into the fight against a very corrupt government and the biggest law firm in town. So I'm a little frazzled. I was up till 4 in the morning. I was going to read things. Part of the problem of these questions being given to everybody is we're thinking about a lot of the same things. Essentially, we have to have the opportunity to get better representatives in office because the game is fixed. The same 12 or 13 people have been picking our commissioners for the last 15 years. One thing I'm proud to say about all of the candidates you see up here is none of us are part of that. So I think that everyone deserves a close look. I think that we have to do everything we can to inform ourselves. Our biggest problem that I see is that we need a better informed community so that they can make better decisions on their choice. Thank you.
Ruta Jouniari.
Sarasota adopted a plan called the 2050 Plan. The 2050 Plan basically outlined how growth should occur over stages and over decades. What had happened now is the commission has it in front of them, and just as recently as 2 weeks ago, a developer came and wanted a variance of the 2050 Plan. It's not even been fully adopted, and now the developers are already wanting to change it. And that's a problem, because this had been a map and a roadway to make sure we have preservation and conservation, that we have wildlife corridors, so that we have panthers and we have hogs and we have different wildlife that migrate, that we don't ruin their migration patterns. These are things that we have to look for. And the reason being is it's about infrastructure again. If we're building all these developments and we're not having adequate access in and out, it's a problem. The way that I see enforcing it is a couple of ways. One is we have to go back to all these developers and make them accountable for what they're doing and make sure that the impact fees are proper and sufficient to cover our expenses. And secondly, I ask all of you, regardless of party lines, this has nothing to do with party. We all share the roads, we share the water, we share this land. Make sure you elect people who really care about all of us and protecting our environment and making sure that development is under control.
Wesley and Biggs.
To me, smart growth is a system of development that curbs urban sprawl, it curbs environmental degradation, it accounts for our already lacking infrastructure, but it also preserves resources so that future generations can address whatever needs of their era that they need to. So when we see issues come to the county commission, these big development projects, and everybody here is right, is the most common thing that I hear is I'm really unhappy with the level of development, traffic, this big development is going in, I didn't move down here for a big ocean of urban sprawl or suburban sprawl. And we short-term need to be preserving the integrity of our comprehensive plan. These privately initiated amendments that come before the county commission that 95% of the time get approval, it is eroding the intent of that, and it's eroding our community. So long-term, I think we need to take a cold, hard look at Sarasota County as a whole and what we can be doing to make it more resilient in terms of severe weather. We got quite lucky with Irma, and I know it was I'm still frazzled from it. But big weather systems like that, Irma should have taught us a lesson that we need to be taking these things seriously. Mangroves, to keep storm surges from coming in. We need to address assess our infrastructure and identify which points, our lift stations, our roads, our essential government buildings, and what we can be doing to harden them in the event that another Irma or another severe weather incident comes our way.
Okay, question number 2 for our District 17 candidates. This time we'll start with Julio Gonzalez. The question is, District 17 includes a large geographic area and incorporates such diversity in terms of economy, demographics, etc. What is your strategy for addressing the various needs of the district, and what are your top 3 priorities after getting sworn in?
Well, thank you. We touched a little bit about the diversity of the district on my answer to the last question. And I think that one of the things that we need to discuss is the things that unify our districts. Because even though it's diverse, there are some undercurrents that run all across. And the first is healthcare, in my opinion. And I think what we have done, what our government has done with healthcare has been a travesty. I think we are sorely underrepresented. We, meaning physicians, your doctors, people who have expertise in healthcare, have been severely underrepresented. There's only 13 of them. There's only 13 doctors in Congress. The numbers have been dwindling. And I think we have a great opportunity in our district to send somebody who has studied it. I've written a book on it. I wrote a book on healthcare reform, where I made my arguments about the things that needed to be done. And I'd like to follow through with those arguments, which essentially the core principle, the thing that undergirds all the analysis, is the best place to make the decisions for your health care is at your doctor's office, between you and your doctor, with minimal interference by either government, your insurance companies, or the attorneys. So that's my first priority. Second priority, I think we really need to take great care in addressing the environmental issues that are plaguing our state. Our state we're essentially one big wetland, and it has to do with the geological appearance of Florida, and it has some very unique qualities that need to be addressed in Congress because it requires issues that deal with federal law to be addressed. And then the third, yes, I think our veteran situation is deplorable, and I find that the nexus, that great nexus that I can fill between the administrative stuff in dealing with our veterans and the healthcare issues dealing with our veterans, I can fill in very nicely.
Bill Akins.
Well, it is a huge district, and it is so diverse. You go over to Sebring, and it's one of the most economically depressed areas in the state. And then you come over to Sarasota, and it's booming and lively and going. And you get over to the ranches, the cattle ranches, you get to the citrus growers. And all of those people need to be represented. I mean, I'm not against sugar. What I am against is them controlling things. You know, you need to be represented as much as anybody. So that's one of the things that I want to do. And yes, ranchers, citrus. What's Florida without citrus? It doesn't exist. So everyone needs to be taken care of. And you need to spread it out, and it is so diverse. And one of the things I'm going to do is be right here. When Congress is not in session, I will be in the district, listening to the ranchers, listening to the citrus growers, listening to you, and then taking that back to Washington and trying to enact the laws that you need. Not that what I want to do, but what you want to do. And when I get there, the first thing I want to do is get on board with the President on the Veterans Affairs, and I want to try and get on the Committee for Veterans Affairs, because that's my #1 priority. Without veterans, we would not have a country. The second thing I do is try and get in with Jim Jordan and those guys at the Freedom Caucus and start bringing the budget down, getting the deficit down. Because we get that done, and it'll be better for everyone. We cannot allow this to go on and destroy our grandchildren's future. And it will if we don't get a hold of it. And then we've got, there's just so many things that are going to happen. When we get there in January, guess what? There'll be different issues. And I'll be back here finding out what you need. So in the long run, it's what you need, not what Big Sugar needs, not what Citrus needs, it's what you need. Thank you very much.
Mayor Greg Steube.
Thank you. Three priorities for a district that's so diverse as this. Again, I have to bring up agriculture again because it's such a huge part of this district. Largest citrus producing district in the entire country. Having somebody with an agricultural background that can represent a district that is filled with cattlemen, dairy farmers, and citrus growers is vitally important to this district. They're, like I discussed the issues on labor, they discussed the issues on all the things that they're facing in this state as it relates to the environment and that we're facing as it relates to the environment. The second thing that I've talked about relentlessly on the campaign trail is completely reforming the VA system. I'll tell you a quick story as quick as I can because we've only got a couple minutes, but there was an individual that called me not too long ago that was set to have a heart catheterization at Bay Pines. Drove the hour and a half to go up there, sat in the gurney, was ready to go in for the procedure, and the nurse came in and said, "I'm sorry, sir, but your surgeon didn't show up today. And we're booked for the next couple of days. You're going to have to go back on the waiting list. It's going to be another 2 months before we can have the procedure." That is not how our government should be treating our veterans. I think the solution to that is give a veteran who qualifies, if you're service-connected disabled, you get a card. Call it TRICARE Plus, call it whatever you want to call it, and you can go wherever you want to go and get the health care that you need and deserve. When I got out of active duty, I had to have a knee transplant. I decided not to have it at the VA hospital because I didn't want the VA hospital cutting on my knee. I had my own surgeon do it at my own expense with our own health care insurance. I had the ability to do that, but not all our veterans do. I think they should have the choice to go whatever provider they want to go to, and we as taxpayers would save billions and billions of dollars in taxpayer dollars getting veterans the health care that they deserve. With 30 seconds left, the other big thing that I want to talk about is infrastructure. The federal government should be playing more of a part as it relates to the infrastructure, and so especially Sarasota County. You can talk about River Road. River Road needs desperately to be improved. We worked on getting an infrastructure change between I-75 and 41, but there's absolutely no reason why the federal government can't come in because it is a hurricane evacuation route. Those in northern Lee County and Charlotte County and South Sarasota County use that as an evacuation route, and it lives up to its name when it rains, River Road. So we need to work on the feds getting more involved in infrastructure.
Okay, second question for our Board of County Commission candidates, and it's much shorter. Voters will have the option in November to change the way Sarasota County Commissioners are elected. A single-member district's county charter amendment will be on the ballot. The amendment would give voters the choice of restricting voting in each commission race to those who live within the district boundaries. As a candidate, what are your views in detail with this proposed amendment? And this question goes to Alexandra Coe.
Well, the premise behind single-member districts is that, one, people think that it will make your county commissioner more accountable to you and to the district. And the second thing is that people are hoping that that will end corruption. I think it's a really great idea. I'm not completely sure that you can force somebody to represent you just because you voted for them in the district, nor that you can end corruption just by changing how the representation is. So really, I love the premise behind it, but I think it's really up to the voters to decide, do they want to vote for one person or all five?
Mike Consentino.
At the national and state levels, we vote for the people in our district, and they are responsible to us. This measure simply brings local politics in line with long-standing methods of electing national and state representatives. Clearly, local elected officials shouldn't be held to a broader geographical standard than our national and state officials. Like a lousy peanut butter sandwich, our local politicians are spread too thin.
Ruta Jouniari.
Well, I'm in favor of single-member districts for several reasons. One is, you're here tonight, but for us, it's very hard to get to 400,000 people covering an entire county. If you only have to go and actually campaign in a single-member district, you actually get to meet your neighbors and you actually get better representation. The biggest thing I hear on the road now, because we're going from Northport down up to the airport, is we've never seen our commissioner. We don't know who they are. In Northport, they call themselves the red-headed stepchildren. So this would give better access to you, to your commissioner.
Wesley and Biggs.
I too will be voting in favor of single-member districts. I'm one of those folks that believes it will hold our county officials a little bit more accountable. Clearly, they don't even care enough to face their citizenry and the people that are electing them. If we look at campaign budgets, it would dramatically reduce the cost to run from, right now we have 312,000 voters. In District 4 we have a little over 60,000 voters. Mayo can outspend me, he likely will, but I can outwork him. You can knock on that many doors, but you cannot knock on 312,000 doors. It's very difficult, but I am doing it.
Ramirez.
I will not be supporting the initiative, only because I realize we have a county commission who is not responsive to us. So what we need to do is vote in county commission who are responsible for everybody in the county and not just a special few. So I really believe that even though I get why the people are a little upset, and that's the reason why they made this proposal, they don't feel like they're being represented. What we have to do is vote for me, and I'll be happy to represent every one of you. Thank you.
Okay, we're back to our District 17 candidates. Third question. Clean water is crucial to the Florida economy that many people take for granted. Due to rising water levels and an aging dike system, thick green water carrying toxic algae flowed again from Lake Okeechobee this month in the coastal waters of both South Florida and the Gulf Coast. Coastal communities say previous discharges threaten tourism and health. Since the western part of Lake Okeechobee falls inside of District 17, how will you help resolve this critical water quality issue and aging dike system if elected? And what are your views on Florida offshore and Everglades drilling? This question first goes to Bill Akins.
First of all, the water issues, again, begin with the state legislature. They have let this go way too long, and they have got to get involved. Now, as your congressman, I can help push some federal dollars down here to help get this done, but it's got to start here. Your state legislature, as they have been watching this stuff every year come down there, and they've done nothing. They've passed a few laws, but they ignore them. Wonder why? You've got to get them in line first, and then the federal government can come in and help. Drilling in Florida and offshore drilling. My question is, why would we want to do that? Now, if gasoline was 10 bucks a gallon and you had to wait in line for 2 hours to get a couple gallons, you'd be hollering, drill, baby, drill. But we don't need it. There's absolutely no reason to do it. Even with the technology, I spent 35 years in Texas. I've been around a lot of oil fields and I've worked in them. We don't need it. Technology is there to make it safer, but we still don't need it. And I cannot envision a time when Florida would ever need that. Thank you.
Steube.
Well, let me tell you what the legislature has done in the last 2 years. 2 years ago, because of the leadership of the Senate President Joe Negron, as it relates to the guacamole that is coming out of Lake Okeechobee, we passed a $2 billion package bill that built a reservoir south of Lake Okeechobee, because the water naturally goes south, to hold this water so that it's not released. Unfortunately, an infrastructure change that is a $2 billion infrastructure change to build this reservoir south of the lake doesn't happen overnight. It takes time to construct these things. The feds just recently announced a $500 million improvement to build on the Herbert Hoover Dike. So that would allow, and that's $500 million, it was part of this overall deal with working with the feds and the state that we passed 2 years ago that the legislature passed to try to address this issue. Again, doing a $500 million infrastructure change to the dike to raise the dike up. So, because the real problem here is in a year like this, we're getting a lot of rain. So they have to release the water or neighborhoods near and around Lake Okeechobee are going to be flooded. So if we raise the height of the dike, which was what was just approved, the $500 million, they'll be able to hold that water for longer. In conjunction with the reservoir that was passed 2 years ago that our legislature passed, we should be able to hold a lot more water to be able to hold it in years that we have a lot of rain like this. So that's what the legislature has done. I will continue. I voted for that bill against the sugar industry, by the way. I voted for that bill. I've always supported pro-environment issues as it relates to offshore drilling. When I first ran for the state house, almost 10 years ago now, 8 years ago is when I got elected, the whole oil drill baby drill thing was the issue of the day, because the Speaker of the House wanted to allow drilling off Florida's coast within 3 miles of the coast. And I took a position before I got elected that I would not support drilling off the coast of Florida, and I've always had that position. I voted against the fracking bill that would allow fracking in the state of Florida, because I don't think that we should be fracking in the state of Florida with the way that our aquifer is and the way that our sand is and the permutation of that. I voted against fracking, and so I will always support those environmental issues. Thank you.
Well, fracking is taking place in the state of Florida, and we didn't pass a bill to regulate it. So look, here's the fun fact. My very first advocacy effort while I was in high school, my daughter doesn't know this, she's about to learn too, was a fundraising campaign to raise money to preserve Crystal River for our manatee population that was dwindling. And I remember because we raised about $3,000 and I had a guy come in with a parrot, and he rode 25 miles on a bicycle with a parrot on his shoulder. It made for a very stained shoulder. But after that same concern that I had about environmental issues in Florida has carried me through. I wrote 2 theses. One of them was in college, which was about the apple snail and its verge of extinction because of what we were doing to Lake Okeechobee in disturbing the natural ebb and flow of water and essentially ruining their population and therefore ruining the Everglades kite population as well. My second one was in law school when I took a course on wetlands law and environmental law, and guess what it was? It was a legal thesis on why we should open up Midnight Pass and let it flow. That was my position. So look, these are issues that have been very near and dear to me since my adolescence. And here's the bottom line. The bottom line is that it's a very complicated problem. It's a complicated problem because we have ruined our wetlands. We let the water flow into Lake Okeechobee and we can build a dike 6 feet taller, but guess what's going to happen? We're still going to have algae because we have too many phosphates. Why do we have too many phosphates? Because upstream we don't have enough wetlands. So when you release whatever's out there, it's going to be green and murky, and it's going to ruin everything downstream. And by the way, one more comment. What happened in West Miami, and the encroachment into the East Everglades was a crime. I aim to stop that kind of activity.
Back to our Board of County Commission candidates. Question: this month, a previous county commissioner wrote a piece in the local paper applauding the current Board of County Commissioners by not proposing a millage rate increase or a new public service tax on our residents. With property values back to almost historic highs and the explosion of growth, why should any tax increase be considered? Also, how would you grade the current fiscal stewardship of our county leaders? Are services and public assets being maintained or improved? Should larger expenditure projects be put on a ballot as our charter intends? Or is it okay to break these projects into smaller projects so they fall beneath the $22 million threshold without public input? This question first goes to Mike Consentino.
I'm going to quit kidding myself and do a little bit of reading to you guys. Prepared these over the weekend. I can start out a little bit. Mrs. Robinson consistently voted against giving away public lands like and including Beach Road. I got a little bit of a soft spot for her in my heart. Obviously, keeping the millage rates the same, that's good, but it ignores the fact that taxes were raised because property values went up. Those are both small potatoes issues. The elephant in the room is the comprehensive plan changes that shift the cost of infrastructure away from the new developments and onto the existing taxpayers. And that's completely ignored. So we talk about a little bitty thing, pat ourselves on the back, and ignore the elephant in the room. With respect to public assets being maintained, like Shell Road on Siesta Key in the 70s, Beach Road was intentionally neglected and allowed to fall into a state of disrepair to set up its giveaway to adjacent landowners. Taylor Engineering did a report in 2013, said they could permanently fix the road. You can see a picture of it. For $2 million, where they could just keep patching it and have no public access for $6 million. County chose us $6 million. Obviously, our county commission regularly ignores its charter, the comprehensive plan, but most importantly, the will of the people. Again, the most important thing that we can do as citizens is pay better attention and make better selections, and we count on you for that. Thank you for your time.
Ruta Jouniari.
About a month ago, I actually met with the fire chief for Sarasota County. He gave me a frightening statistic. He said, with the current growth that we have right now, we are 10 years behind where we should be for manpower and equipment for emergency services. You should be frightened by that, because the response time now, if you're having a cardiac arrest, instead of being 10 to 15 minutes, gets pushed back to 30, 35 minutes, and it's a life and death decision. We need to make sure that we have accountability. I understand the tax question, but we have to make sure that the impact fees that we're charging to new construction pay for infrastructure and pay for the management and use in our community. Again, this goes to all of our lives being at stake by these decisions. As far as the breaking up of the $22 million and under going in front of the public, I think any expenditure should be brought to the public for discussion. It's a sin when we go in front of the commission and we get dismissed. It's our right. These people represent us. I want to represent us, and I think every single person should have a voice with our commission on how we spend our tax dollars. Thank you.
Wesley and Riggs.
Well, before raising taxes, we should look at the budget and find improvements there. We're already giving sweetheart deals to these developers. We're selling surplus lands. We don't need to raise taxes on us. We need to raise impact fees on developers and hold them accountable to the roads and new infrastructure they require for these developments. The Director of Public Works, Spencer Anderson, recently reported to our Board of County Commissioners that there's a 20% reduction in the efficacy of every single dollar going towards infrastructure right now due to inflation and increase in the ADA, American Disability Act, requirements. So we are getting less for our money, and we are, as a population, subsidizing those developers. That is wrong. We don't need to pay more in taxes. They need to pay their fair share. This is such a long question. Public services, they're on the chopping block. Our public libraries, our SCAT system, those are on the budgetary chopping block just this last budget season. We, again, should not be paying the price through our public services that developers are placing on us. That is wrong. They need to be held accountable to the infrastructure that they need, and breaking up the $22 million requirement to go to ballot. There's already too much gray area. There's already not enough accountability. I don't believe we should be segmenting big budget projects to sneak it by without us as a population having a say. And $65 million, we should have a say, we deserve a say, and we rightfully have a say, and we need to continue that.
Lourdes Ramirez.
If I promise to grade the county commission, I'll give it a D. One of the problems we're having is the county has been filling the gap. We've had a budget deficit since the recession. And even though we're growing, as a community, it seems like we continue having budget deficits. And part of that is because we're subsidizing new development. And the county's doing recklessly with spending money. I mean, do we really have to continue subsidizing a rolling facility that's not really bringing in any money for our community? And I think that has to be cut. So I think there's a lot of fat in the budget that needs to be cut back without having to raise taxes. And I'm concerned about the fact that the county has been dipping into the economic uncertainty reserves to cover the gap in their deficit for the past 10 years. It had $65 million in it before, and now it has about $5 million. So if we have another downturn, we're going to be in a lot of hurt. Now, there's other reserves that can't touch, like the natural disaster reserves. And you'll hear them, oh, we have reserves, but it's not reserves for our economy. So I'm really concerned that the county is wasting money. I don't think we have to raise taxes, but I really think they have to start cutting the fat, especially for these pet projects.
And Alexandra Coe.
As far as fiscal responsibility, I would probably give our county commission a D as well. They remind me of a teenager with too much allowance. They're always broke and they're always spending money on the wrong things. I think that's what our county is doing. Their priorities are in other places. Nathan Benderson Park is listed as a priority for the county. I think there's a lot of other things that should be a priority. Services and public assets, they're selling off our public lands to the lowest bidder. Not to the highest bidder, but to the lowest bidder. And that's wrong. Those are our assets. At the same time, they're jeopardizing our ecology. Our ecology is our economy in Sarasota County. And every piece of land is just something for somebody to put cookie cutter subdivisions on. And that needs to stop. Those are our assets. And those things have a rich potential to be economic engines for us. You know, birding, all these other ecotourism things. Agriculture, as Mr. Steube has talked about, is the second largest economic engine for the state of Florida. We need to understand that in Sarasota and understand the value of our rural landscapes and preserve those. As far as breaking down those projects, we've been doing that for a long time, and I don't know how we demand that it be handled differently, but it should be. Maybe we need to elect people to the charter review that will bring things before the commission to improve our constitution, the charter, and not dismantle it like it's happening right now. Thank you.
Okay, we are winding down. This is back to our candidates for District 17, and this is the shortest question. What makes you the best candidate? And this will be their 2-minute closing statement. And this goes to Greg Steube.
We get 2 minutes, so I just want to thank all of you for being here today and taking your personal time to come and listen to us. You can find more information about my campaign at www.electgregsteube.com. We've got flyers in the back, signs in the back. I want to thank my wife for putting up with me and coming to all these events. My 7-year-old son, who would much rather be doing a lot of other things right now than sitting here listening to me. And I'm the only candidate in this race with a background in agriculture, which is a huge part of this district. I've represented Sarasota County for 8 years. I've served in the military and the Army. I served in Operation Iraqi Freedom. And if you're a conservative Republican, then I'm your guy. All you have to do is get information on our website. Thank you guys for coming here tonight. I'd be honored to have your support. August 28th is the Republican primary. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for being here tonight. I really appreciate it. This event is just fantastic, if for no other reason, but the number of people and the interest that it generates. So thank you for being here, and thank you for making it yet another highlight in this campaign cycle. Look, why am I the best candidate to represent us in Washington, D.C.? Because I'm the one who has the biggest breadth of knowledge and the widest and broadest amount of experience behind it. I'm the only one who's taken care of patients and have seen the suffering that ensues when federal policy goes horribly bad. And by the way, I've also seen it when state policy goes horribly bad. I'm the only one who's made the effort to understand the issues better by getting another education. which in this case happened to be a law degree, so I could understand our legal system and understand how these things affect us. I'm the only one who's written a book on our Constitution. I'm probably the biggest expert of the Constitution of anybody in this panel. I am the only one who's written on healthcare policy recurrently. And here's the bottom line. The bottom line is that I want to go to Washington, D.C. because I love this country. I love this community. I'm intensely concerned about what's happening to us moving forward. And I'm going there with the honest, bona fide, good faith intent of solving problems, of addressing the issues of the day, and making sure that they get addressed properly. I may come up to a different conclusion that somebody else will, but the bottom line is, if you send me to Congress, you can rest assured that at least on our seat, the seat that's representing our district, our community, you're going to have somebody who has the honest, good faith effort of trying to solve the problem and make our situation in our country better. God bless you all. God bless our great country.
Akins.
First, I'd like to thank you all for being here. And why am I the best candidate? I'm not a lawyer with lots of experience. I'm not going to go up there and continue to gunk everything up like lawyers do. And let me tell you something. If anybody tells you that they have all the answers, don't trust them, because they don't. If you want to see who's going to represent you, go to the FEC website. Look where the money comes from. The money is who's going to get represented. Now, I made a statement earlier, I don't take money from outside the district. I got to correct myself. My wife Ann sent me $100 from Virginia. But I'm here to represent you and nobody but you in America, and not the special interest. And I too have fought 4 years in Vietnam, and I'll continue to fight for you. And again, if anyone tells you they've got all the answers, don't believe them, because they don't. Send me August 28th. God bless all of you, and God bless America.
Okay, to our Board of County Commission, last question. What makes you the best candidate? This will be your 2-minute closing statement, and this goes to Ruta Jouniari.
Well, thank you all for giving us the opportunity to speak to you tonight and for you to get to know us a little bit. The reason why I think I'm the best candidate is a couple of reasons, actually. One is my fiscal responsibility. I've owned a company 14 years. I've worked in finance for the previous 10 years. So I know how to balance a budget and be economically sound. Combine that with my 501 nonprofit work, I get to know the community, and I love the community, and I work with the community free of charge. It's as a volunteer for most of the things that I had mentioned. And the reason also is because I'm going to be representing you. I'm not representing special interests. I'm running a grassroots campaign. My average campaign donations are $20.18. And I'm proud of that, because that means I have a vested interest from all of you believing in me that I will represent you. I'll fight for this environment to make sure that we protect Florida. As many of the other candidates mentioned, it's crucial, our agriculture and our environment, to sustainability of our county, and to make sure that we have good infrastructure and we have somebody who's going to answer again to you, not to special interest or anyone else. I'm asking for your vote November 6th. My website is voteforruta.com. You all have handouts. And thank you again for taking the time and being interested enough to be here to listen to us tonight, because it actually means you care as much as we do. Thank you.
Wesley and Biggs.
So I'm a native Floridian, I'm a small business owner, but most of all, I am a concerned citizen, just like everyone in this room. To me, an effective elected official has the ABCs. They're attentive, they're bold, and they're collaborative, and I embody all of those. Attentive. I've been at this point at hundreds of events, and I've not seen one county commissioner at any of them. Nonpartisan, Republican, Democratic events, across the spectrum, no matter where I'm at, I've not once. Okay, bold. We need people that are moving past stagnation. We have had for decades now stagnation on our county commission. We need new perspectives, fresh ideas, someone that's not afraid to see we don't live in a vacuum, right? Counties across the country are tackling the exact problems we are, right? So a quick Google, would help in a lot of cases. And collaborative. I taught high school students at Sarasota Military Academy, Sarasota High, Booker, and Riverview High School how to work together despite their differences. We need that now more than ever. We are setting a poor example for this next generation if we cannot come together and solve our community issues as a community. We cannot expect DC to get better if we do not cultivate that sense of community right here at home. So my name is Wesley Beggs. I'm running to represent citizens of this county that value environmental protection, affordable housing, and sustainable development. Thank you all so much for coming out. It means the world. Thank you.
Lourdes Ramirez.
I'm going to set aside my stump speech because something happened 2 weeks ago that really disturbed me. It actually shows how the county commission is not representing us. We have a charter, and for the first time in 10 years, we have 3 initiatives in the November ballot done by citizens. And so the county commission started to think about that. It's been 10 years. And the county commission, there's actually 4 ways to change a charter. 3 of those ways is bureaucrats sitting in their air-conditioned rooms on their comfy chairs, tailing staff to make the decision, or at least to write up the language to change, propose change to the charter. The last one is by citizen initiative. They have to hire a lawyer, raise funds, collect petitions, and that's about 15,000 petitions that they have to collect, which is about 5%. And then they have to go raise funds to campaign to get you to vote for their petition. So the county commission apparently thought that was too easy, and are now talking about changing that. They want to change it from 5% to 10%. So now instead of 15,000 signatures, they'll have to get 30,000 signatures. And you have to do it in 18 months. So I am furious. As a county commissioner, I would have stood up and said, no, we can't put restrictions on citizens. It wasn't right. It steps on our ability to make change or propose change on the county commission. And I was appalled that the county commission even thought to change the charter, or at least propose the charter for a change, to restrict us. And yes, they're Republicans, and we shouldn't add more regulations, but somehow they have no problem adding regulations to citizens. So I believe I'll be the best candidate because I would have stood up for you and the county commission. Thank you.
Alexandra Coe.
Well, development is the most pressing issue that we have in this county, and for 15 years I have been involved with development issues. I know the players and I know the problems. Developing swampland is tricky. Overdeveloping it is dangerous. I'm the only candidate that understands environmental systems and will be able to protect what ecosystem we have left. I also have consultancy status at the United Nations. I've been doing that for 10 years. Through that network, I have access to the brightest minds and greatest ideas in urban development, in rural protection, and a variety of other sustainable development practices. That's a huge asset to our community. And I am already doing things. I'm involved with trying to find a solution for the poor navigation in our bay and the shifting sands. I am gathering a network of people with expertise in environmental systems for us to revisit our sensitive land policy in Sarasota County. So I'm always looking for ways to get things done. I love to be a problem solver. I love when somebody comes to me and says, boy, I have this really bad problem with the city or with the county, and I love to get in there and straighten it out. And that's what I think we need, and I think that's what makes me the best candidate, is I'm tenacious about making government work for us. So you can find out more about me at alexandraco.com. You can get one of my lovely fans so that you can keep cool in our hot August days that are approaching us. And as far as my background, I'm a scientist, I'm an anthropologist, and I also have been involved with this community in so many different levels that I have a very broad vision of what we need for the future of Sarasota, and I'm also willing to reach out and communicate with a lot of different groups. I respect other people's opinions, and I think we need someone who's going to be in office that's going to work for the future of our county.
And last but not least, Mike Consentino.
I'm going to try to talk really fast to you folks on this because I got a lot of stuff I want to cover. First of all, I'd like to thank Lourdes for what she just said with respect to the charter amendments. My team and I have worked our butts off, and we have got 30,000 petitions in the last 18 months to get 2 charter amendments on the ballot. One keeps beach road in public ownership and control like it has been for 100 years. The other protects every park, preserve, beach, and water access in all of Sarasota County. I envision making the charter amendment process easier to involve us rather than harder to kick us out of the process. I'm going to take a couple minutes and talk about Lourdes. Former head of the Sarasota County Republican Party, Bob Waxter, actually got a credit card, made donations to Democrats in Lourdes' name, and then called the newspaper and told them about it. They smeared her to death when she ran against Maio last time. Mr. Waxter also gerrymandered, that's why you're in the district. He came down here around Al's house just to get him to be able to run against Lourdes. I worked with her on siesta key issues for 10 years. I think she's absolutely phenomenal. Wesley Beggs is my Democratic opponent in District 4, and I made a hell of a bad mistake of kind of ignoring her a few months ago. She has worked her butt off, and quite frankly, I don't even know if I can catch her. She's so far ahead of me at this point, and I'm not really disturbed by that because her hard work, her intelligence, I mean, she's just phenomenal. What we need to do is we need to avoid the Christians, and Ruta is spectacular, and so is Alexandra. They are both District 2. The other 3 of us are District 4. The only thing you really need to do is inform yourselves, not vote for Christian Ziegler, and not vote for Maio. Outside of that, make your choice and you'll be in good shape.
What do you think, folks? Good night? All right, on behalf of the Nokomis Area Civic Association, really, we have been honored to have each of you here tonight. And thank you for your time, preparation. And folks, go vote in August. And God bless each of you, and thank you for being here tonight.